Welcome, history enthusiasts, to the Wonder Box. Ever wondered how the most devastating conflict in human history, World War II, actually began? It wasn't a bolt from the blue, a sudden clap of thunder in a clear sky. No, the seeds of World War II were sown much earlier, in the muddy trenches and shattered landscapes of World War I. Think of it like this. World War I was a brutal surgery meant to remove a tumor of international tension. But instead of healing, the patient, the world, was left weakened, infected, and vulnerable to a far more aggressive disease. That disease, my friends, was the festering resentment and unresolved issues left behind by the war to end all wars. Let's rewind the clock back to 1918. The guns of World War I fell silent. Exhausted and bleeding, the world breathed a collective sigh of relief. But beneath the surface, deep wounds remained unaddressed, especially for Germany. The Treaty of Versailles, meant to secure peace, became a breeding ground for future conflict. Imagine being forced to sign a peace treaty that you believe is utterly unjust. Imagine being stripped of territory, your economy crippled by massive reparations payments. Imagine your national pride shattered, blamed for a war that many felt was not solely your fault. This was the bitter pill Germany was forced to swallow. The treaty wasn't just about redrawing maps. It was about assigning blame and extracting punishment. And that punishment felt crippling, humiliating to the German people. It fostered a sense of deep resentment, a burning desire for revenge and to reclaim lost glory. Think of it as a pressure cooker. The Treaty of Versailles clamped down the lid, trapping anger and frustration inside. As the 1920s unfolded, this pressure started to build. Economic hardship, hyperinflation that wiped out savings, and political instability plagued Germany. This was fertile ground for extreme ideologies to take root. Enter stage right, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Hitler was a master manipulator, a charismatic speaker who tapped into the widespread German resentment and disillusionment. He promised to tear up the Treaty of Versailles, to restore German greatness, to avenge the humiliation of defeat. His message resonated deeply with a population desperate for hope and direction. The Nazis weren't just about restoring Germany, they were about creating a new world order based on racial supremacy and aggressive expansion. Their ideology, Nazism, was a toxic blend of extreme nationalism, racism, and anti-Semitism. It painted a picture of a superior Aryan race destined to rule, and scapegoated Jews and other minorities for Germany's problems. Hitler's rise wasn't a sudden coup, it was a gradual ascent fueled by public discontent and political opportunism. Through propaganda, intimidation, and skillful maneuvering, the Nazis consolidated power in the 1930s. Germany wasn't alone in embracing extreme ideologies. Across Europe, in Italy, Benito Mussolini had already seized power, establishing a fascist regime. Fascism, like Nazism, was a totalitarian ideology that prioritized the state over the individual. It glorified nationalism, militarism, and authoritarianism. Mussolini's Italy, though not as powerful as Nazi Germany, was a pioneer of fascist rule and an inspiration to Hitler. Meanwhile, in Asia, Japan was undergoing its own transformation. Driven by a desire for resources and regional dominance, Japan was rapidly militarizing. Japanese militarism was fueled by a belief in their own racial superiority and a hunger for expansion in Asia. They saw themselves as the rightful leaders of Asia, destined to liberate the continent from Western colonialism and replace it with their own. By the 1930s, these three nations, Germany, Italy, and Japan, formed a dangerous axis of aggressive, expansionist powers. They were united by their rejection of the post-World War I world order and their ambition to redraw the global map in their favor. The world watched with growing alarm as these regimes flexed their muscles. Hitler began to openly defy the Treaty of Versailles, remilitarizing the Rhineland, annexing Austria, and setting his sights on Czechoslovakia. Mussolini invaded Ethiopia, showcasing Italy's imperial ambitions. Japan invaded Manchuria and then China, initiating a brutal war in Asia. The League of Nations, created after World War I to prevent future conflicts, proved woefully ineffective in stopping this aggression. The major powers, Britain and France, adopted a policy of appeasement. Appeasement was the strategy of giving in to Hitler's demands in the hope of avoiding war. The logic was understandable. The horrors of World War I were still fresh in everyone's minds. No one wanted to repeat that carnage, but appeasement only emboldened Hitler. Each concession he received fueled his ambition and convinced him that Britain and France were weak and unwilling to fight. The Munich Agreement of 1938, where Britain and France allowed Hitler to annex the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia, became a symbol of appeasement's failure. Instead of satisfying Hitler, it only whetted his appetite for more territory. It demonstrated to Hitler that the Western powers were not serious about stopping him. In March 1939, Hitler violated the Munich Agreement and occupied the rest of Czechoslovakia. This blatant act of aggression finally shattered any illusions that appeasement could work. It became clear that Hitler was not interested in negotiation or compromise. His goal was conquest. The pressure cooker of unresolved post-WI grievances was about to explode. Poland became the next target. Hitler demanded the return of Danzig, a German-speaking city that had been separated from Germany after World War I, and access across the Polish corridor, which divided Germany. Poland, remembering past partitions and knowing Hitler's true intentions, refused to yield. Britain and France, finally realizing the futility of appeasement, pledged to defend Poland's independence. They drew a line in the sand. Hitler, convinced that Britain and France were bluffing or too weak to intervene effectively, pressed ahead with his plans. On September 1, 1939, Nazi Germany invaded Poland. The German Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War, quickly overwhelmed Polish defenses. The invasion was swift, brutal, and unprovoked. It was the final straw. Britain and France, honoring their pledge to Poland, declared war on Germany on September 3, 1939. The world plunged into chaos. World War II had begun. It was a war born not in a vacuum, but from the ashes of the previous global conflict. It was a war fueled by unresolved grievances, dangerous ideologies, and the failure of diplomacy and appeasement. The invasion of Poland was the trigger, the spark that ignited the global conflagration. But the tinder had been laid long before, in the aftermath of World War I, in the Treaty of Versailles, and in the rise of fascism and militarism. World War II serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unresolved conflicts and the devastating consequences of unchecked aggression. It teaches us that peace is not just the absence of war, but the active pursuit of justice, understanding, and cooperation. And it underscores the importance of learning from history so we don't repeat its most tragic mistakes. So there you have it, the story of how World War II erupted from the long shadow of World War I. A complex and sobering tale of unintended consequences and the devastating power of unresolved conflict. If you found this journey into history fascinating and informative, please give this video a like. And if you want to explore more wonders of history and beyond, don't forget to subscribe to the Wonder Box. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of curious minds. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next Wonder Box adventure.